Hi everyone, welcome to this new video session. So here in this video we are going to discuss about copy constructors and destructors. Okay, so basically in our last session we learned we wrote some pseudocode uh, to understand the constructors, the default constructor and the parameterized constructor, right? So we wrote a default constructor and then we invoke that default constructor by creating an object. Similarly, we wrote a parameterized constructor. We also overloaded the parameterized constructor, and then we called the different overloaded parameterized constructor from the main function by creating object. And when we created the object, we passed those member variables as arguments so that the individual parameterized constructors get called, right? So if it is integer, then we pass 5 6. If it is string integer, we pass, let's say, some string like abc comma 20, like that we pass, and then accordingly we invoke the parameterized constructor. Okay, and then I also mentioned you that the C++ compiler already provides default constructor. C++ compiler already provides copy constructor and also destructor. Now the question here is, why we, if already the compiler is providing copy constructor, default constructor and destructor, then why we need to write it again? So the answer to this is, so basically, let's say if you don't write any default constructor, then the default constructor, that is the C++ compiler gives by default, gets called. But let's say you have a member variable in your class, let's say integer a, and you want to assign 5 to it. Okay, how will you do that? So you can do that in the default constructor itself, right? And int a is equal to 5. Okay, or let's say you want to do some let's say you have a DB class wherein you want to do some initialization of the DB member variables. Like if there is a DB host, you want to initialize it. So those things you can do it in the default constructor, right? And then when it comes to copy constructor, right? So copy constructor, now same question as like default constructor, same question for copy constructor as well, right? So let's say we already compiler already provides copy constructor, then why we need a copy constructor? So basically compiler does a shallow copy. So there is something called deep copy and there is something called shallow copy. So by default, compiler does shallow copy. Okay. But let's say you have a pointer in your class. Your one of the member variable is a pointer. Okay. So you have to dynamically allocate memory to it. Then you have to assign some value to it. Okay. And then you also need to release the memory, right? So we now in the latest C++, we have smart pointers, right? So once the pointer goes out of scores, automatically the memory gets released, right? But let's say you have int star ptr or char star ptr. Okay, and you have dynamically initialized memory, so you have to release it, right? So now the difference between deep copy and shallow copy is that, so let's say you have uh, so this is deep copy, okay, and this is, let's say, shallow copy. Okay, so let's say in deep copy, let me explain first the shallow copy. So this is the default one. Shallow copy is the default one, which the compiler already does. Okay, so you have p. Okay, so P, you have an object and that object is holding some member variable. Okay. Similarly, you have Q. Okay. So when copy constructor gets called, so this let's say this is holding very value as 20. Okay. Uh, and let's say this is also holding value as 20. Okay, so in the memory, the memory that it will be pointing to will be the same in case of shallow copy. Okay, so p is also pointing to 20 in the same memory location, q is also pointing to 20 in the same memory location when it is copied. Okay, when the default copy constructor is getting called is when like two member variables will when we call a copy constructor. Let's say p is a object, okay, and from p you like uh, made q. Okay, so now what is copy constructor? Copy constructor is an object which is created by using some other object, right? So you already have an object with you, okay, which is holding some now that object is part of that object is of some class, and that class is holding some member variable, right? So basically all I want to say here is, so p is pointing to p is a like original object which is pointing to 20 in the same memory location. Similarly, q is derived from p. So q is made from p, meaning by calling by calling copy constructor, we have made q from p. Okay, so this q is also pointing to the q is having the member variable that is also pointing to 20 in the same memory location. But in case of shallow copy, the only difference here is, let's say here is it is a, okay, and here it is b, okay. So this will, when and when say you from a you made b, okay, from a you made b, okay, so a will point to a different memory location. Similarly, B will also point to a different memory location. Okay, this is what I wanted to explain. Okay, so this is the difference between deep copy and shallow copy. Okay, so this is like the default behavior, the default constructor that is provided, the default copy constructor that is provided by the compiler, C++ compiler, is when this is this this is applicable. But in case when you want to deep copies is when you want to when you are dynamically allocating the memory, is when deep copy is done. Okay, so yeah, so this is all about deep copy and shallow copy. Okay, so let me just close this. Okay, so now let's say I have let's see the pseudocode that I've already written. Okay, so let's say let me clear this up. Okay, okay, so now let's say hmm, uh, I have a parameterized constructor. Okay, and that parameterized constructor like int value. Okay, so we have two data members here, in data and in star ptr. Okay, and then like like we have a like in star ptr, so we are dynamically allocating the memory here, as you can see. Okay, and then we are assigning 10. Okay, and this is the syntax for the copy constructor. Okay, this is the syntax for the copy constructor. So this is how we write copy constructor. Okay, so now here in this copy constructor also we are allocating the memory, since as I mentioned you, in terms of in when we do a deep copy is when we have a separate memory location, right? Because in deep copy we are making a object from another object, but in this case the memory address is different. Okay, so that's why we have to allocate memory again, and then you assign it as per your wish. Okay, and there is one more advantage of writing your OS constructor is, so let's say you are original object is holding a member variable which in which the value of star ptr is 5. So when you call copy constructor, you can make it 10, you can make it 15. So basically you can modify, you can do some modifications in your object, right? So this is one more advantage of having your own constructor. Okay, so similarly, if we are dynamically allocating the memory, we have to definitely release it when it goes out of scope. Okay, so let's say you have you have written a class, okay, in which you are reading a file, or in which you are writing a file. Okay, so you have a file handle and you want to close it. Okay, or you have a DV connection, you want to close it. Okay, you have to release the memory, or you have a lock which you have to release it. So those things can be done as part of the destructor. Okay, so since I am allocating the memory, right, in terms of in star PTR, I'm allocating the memory, right? So I need to release the memory as well. So that's why I mentioned star PTR. Okay, so now if you see here, my class obj15, okay, obj1.display, this is when the parameterized constructor get called. Similarly, this is the time when the copy constructor will get called. Okay, and then obj distance. Let's do one thing. Let's compile the code. Okay. Okay. So first time you see the parameterized constructor get called, and then its data is equal to 5, and PTR is equal to 10. Still, since I have hard coded here as 10, like if you see, I've hard coded here as 10. Similarly, next time when I do my class obj2 is equal to obj1 is when the copy constructor get called, and then you see this is the print statement that we are getting. Okay, and at finally after that you see two times destructor is getting called. Why? Because we have created two objects, ob1, ob2. Okay, and as I have mentioned you, once the object goes out of scope, automatically the destructor will get called. Okay, and there if in your class, if you have mentioned, like if you have any pointer and you are dynamically allocating some memory, so there you can release the memory. Okay, and if it's already a smart pointer, then you don't need to worry about it. Okay, let's say you're opening some file and you want to close it. Okay, my file dot close, you need to write, right, pass the object dot close, or else you want to release some lock. Okay, so those things can be done as part of the destructor once the object goes out of scope. Okay, so this is all about the copy constructor, destructor, and how why we need to write our own uh, default constructor, copy constructor, and destructor, and what is the difference between a deep copy and shallow copy. This is I have explained in this particular video. Okay, hope you like this particular session, and if you have any doubts, please do not uh, um, please don't hesitate to reach me out. I already provided mail ID in my YouTube channel. And if you like these sessions, please do like and subscribe and stay connected. And I will be sharing more such videos on C++ and also Python. Thank you. Take care.